Ursula von der Leyen condemns violence in Tbilisi as protests continue after Parliament passed a controversial foreign influence law. Israel reopens the Erez crossing to allow more aid into Gaza as humanitarian groups warn of a looming famine. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has condemned the police response to ongoing protests in Georgia after Parliament passed a controversial foreign influence transparency law. The bill, which was passed on its second reading, requires media and non-commercial organisations to register as pursuing the interests of a foreign power if they receive more than 20% of their funding from abroad. In a post on X, von der Leyen said she was following clashes between police and protesters with great concern. She said the Georgian people want a European future for their country. Georgia is at a crossroads. It should stay the course on the road to Europe. Critics fear the law could be used to stifle the press and derail the country's chances of joining the European Union. One poll puts support for membership among Georgia's population as high as 81%.
We want to be part of the EU, so that's why they need to be extremely authoritarian, totalitarian, violent against the people. But it has its limits. You cannot rule the country which is against you all the time.
Supporters of the bill, proposed by the ruling Georgian Dream Party, say it's necessary to ensure transparency and national sovereignty. President Salome Zurabishvili has vowed to veto the bill, but the ruling party can override that veto by collecting 76 votes. Israel has reopened the Erez crossing to allow more aid to enter northern Gaza. Aid groups have been warning for weeks of a humanitarian catastrophe in the Strip. The World Food Programme estimates around 1.1 million people across Gaza, around half the population, are struggling with catastrophic hunger and starvation.
As you can see behind me, those are the first trucks that came here today from Jordan, and we're gonna run this crossing hopefully every day.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Israel had made meaningful progress towards getting more aid in. He visited the Kerem Shalom crossing with Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant to discuss ways to expand the humanitarian operation.
One of the remaining challenges is making sure that when assistance gets through, it can be effectively distributed within Gaza, and we have to make sure that it's not interfered with or impeded by Hamas.
Blinken, on his 7th diplomatic tour of the Middle East since October the 7th, has urged Hamas to accept a deal presented by Egyptian mediators. That would see 33 Israeli hostages released for a larger number of Palestinians being held in Israeli prisons. The deal also includes a suspension of hostilities with the possibility of steps towards a permanent ceasefire later. Blinken said Israel had made important compromises with the truce deal and that Hamas should take it. The UK government says the first group of migrants has been rounded up for deportation to Rwanda later this year. Last week, Parliament approved legislation allowing deportations to Rwanda, despite criticism from human rights groups that the plan is inhumane and illegal. The law was a response to a Supreme Court decision that blocked flights because authorities couldn't guarantee migrants' safety after deportation. After signing a treaty to improve protections, Rwanda was deemed a safe country. Poland's President Andrzej Duda has condemned what he calls a shameful attack on a synagogue in the capital, Warsaw. Police say the attack on the Nożek synagogue took place at night when an unknown perpetrator tried to set the building on fire with a Molotov cocktail. The fire was extinguished and no one was injured. The attempted arson was also condemned by the Jewish community and Polish politicians. Tens of thousands of people in Romania have used May Day as an excuse to hit the beach as the country marks the official start of the summer season. Parties started on Tuesday night and lasted until dawn, with some tourists even sleeping on the beach. Vamaveka and Kostinești are the destinations of choice this year for young sun-seekers. Hoteliers estimated around 50,000 tourists spent the May Day holiday at seaside hotels. Protesters concerned about the impact of the Paris Olympics have rallied outside the French Interior Ministry. The group requested to see the Interior Minister over concerns for the rights of migrants and homeless people. One protester said he was worried about the way squatters are being evicted. Paris police routinely clear out migrant tent camps, citing public health and safety, but the city is a magnet for people fleeing conflict or poverty.
The time is now for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, according to a top American representative. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss efforts to provide aid to Gaza and negotiate a ceasefire with Hamas. Blinken also met with demonstrators who called for an immediate hostage release deal.
I believe that it's the last chance to bring some of the hostages back.
Both sides remain apart on one key issue: whether the war should end. A deal could see the release of 33 Israeli hostages for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. A leaked proposal detailed an emerging ceasefire agreement, including an Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip in exchange for a planned release of hostages.
Ireland's government has said it's planning to enact legislation by the end of May that would allow it to resume sending asylum seekers back to the United Kingdom. Justice Minister Helen McEntee said the emergency legislation would allow for faster processing of migrants.
This is not a panacea. This has never been a panacea when we talk about returns. The most effective way that we can have an immigration system that's firm but fair is having fast processing. What this means is that people's applications are turned around much more quickly.
Prime Minister Simon Harris urged Westminster to stand by a 2020 agreement that allows asylum seekers to be returned in either direction. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak claims that the increase in migrants crossing over to Ireland proves that his controversial Rwanda deportation policy is working. Irish officials estimate that more than 80% of arrivals into Ireland came via the land border with Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. Athletes and visitors to the 2024 Paris Olympics are in for a treat above and beyond the sporting action. That's because the food on offer is also gold medal standard, with gourmet dishes prepared by some of France's best chefs. 40,000 meals are expected to be served each day to the more than 15,000 athletes at the Olympic Village.
It is a rich variety, a huge amount of receipts that will be plant-based, that will be made available for the general public to try, to experience, and hopefully, fingers crossed, actually we are quite convinced about this, they will love it.
French food services company Sodexo Live said it's created a total of 500 recipes which will be offered at a sit-down eatery for up to 3,500 athletes. Competitors will also have access to grab-and-go food stands, including one dedicated exclusively to French cuisine.
I wanted to do recipes which are both very rich, very gourmand, very mouth-watering, and in the meantime quite easy to understand. So I think the croissant is quite the symbol of Paris, and it was quite obvious for me to do a croissant that I could twist.
The 2024 Paris Olympics runs from July the 26th to August the 11th and promises to be a treat for both sports fans and foodies alike.
A new exhibition in Moscow is displaying Western military vehicles seized during the war in Ukraine. It features 32 tanks manufactured in the US, the UK, Germany and France, among others. A Russian soldier explained how one of them got captured.
Споткнулся об собственный вес и отсутствие маневренности на слабых грунтах земли на территории СВО. Танк фактически был брошен, потому что им пришлось убегать, скажем так, и они не смогли его вытащить.
The exhibition, which runs till the 31st of May, will lead up to the big annual Victory Day parade of the 9th of May. The Kremlin hopes the initiative will discourage NATO countries from sending more weapons to Ukraine. The Pope has renewed his calls for global peace in his weekly audience at the Vatican. He also condemned the profits made by the weapon industry, describing making money off death as terrible.
La guerra sempre è una sconfitta, sempre. Pensiamo alla martoriata Ucraina.
He also prayed for the people affected by flooding in Kenya. Severe weather killed over 50 people and forced the evacuation of more than 100,000 residents.